Your brain is not broken. It is just doing exactly what it's always been designed to do. And that's the thing that no one tells you when you're sitting on the kitchen floor, middle of the night, wondering, like, what the heck is wrong with me? Welcome to the Binge Free Bestie Potty. This is the podcast for women who are done with diluting themselves with diet culture's bullshit and who are ready to be their whole, vibrant selves. I'm Nick, and this episode is going to be all about dopamine, specifically what it has to do with binge and emotional eating. I want to talk about why you've probably blamed yourself 1,000 times for feeling out of control around food. I want to ask you, what if part of the explanation for that is neurological? What if your brain has been running a program that you didn't even know existed? Because that changes things, right? And by the end of today's episode, you're going to understand exactly what's happening in your brain when this urge to eat hits. And you're going to know why willpower was never actually going to cut it. And I'm going to give you one concrete strategy from the breakup that really works with your brain and not against it. So make sure that you stay until the end, because I'm also going to share a client story that really stopped me in my tracks. She used this strategy that I'm going to share with you today. And she used it during what she calls her danger hour. And really, it changed everything for her. It made such a massive difference. So I'm going to share it with you because I want you to hear it and I want you to try it as well. Hey gals, welcome back to Binge Free Bestie, the podcast where we ditch diets, break free from binge and emotional eating, and finally make peace with food and our bodies. I'm your host, Nick Garbedia. I'm a registered therapist who's been there herself. Binge eating, body shame, the whole exhausting cycle. I know it inside out. But here's the good news. Food freedom is totally possible, and my food freedom method is how you will get there. Every week on the potty, I'm going to be sharing real evidence-based tools from my therapy practice and my own recovery to help you to break up with binge and emotional eating and build a calmer, more empowered relationship with food. So, if you're done with the diet cycle and you're ready to reclaim your energy, your confidence, and your life, then you're in the right place. Today, what I want to do is do something a little bit different, and I'm just going to make this episode really short, really punchy. We're just going to chat on one topic, and I'm going to give you one strategy, and we'll be done. Let's talk about dopamine. And I'm sure that you've probably heard that word thrown around a lot. It's a bit more common knowledge these days. You know, we're hearing things like dopamine hit, dopamine rush. People are using it to describe the good feeling that they get from things like scrolling on social media or buying themselves a really nice new pair of shoes. You know, we all know what it feels like to get a dopamine hit. But here's what it actually is and why it's going to matter for you. So dopamine is a chemical in your brain, and it's released in response to pleasure and reward. So it's not just the feeling of pleasure itself. It's more like the brain's kind of do that again signal. So it's all about anticipation. It's motivation. It's your brain saying, hey, that felt really good. Let's make sure that we repeat it. And this system is ancient, right? It kept our ancestors alive because we ate food, the brain released dopamine, and then you remember where the food was and you go back for more. It's totally genius. It's actually not, though, designed for a world where really highly palatable food is available to us 24/7, which it is today. We have got highly processed foods, particularly ones that are high in fat and sugar, and those foods produce a bigger dopamine spike than most natural foods. And your brain registered this as a high value reward. So it really clings onto that. It really wants more. And your brain learns, and it learns fast, that this kind of food equals that big, juicy reward. And it starts to build pathways, neural pathways around that, and strong ones too. So every time you eat that food in a specific context, the pathway is going to get stronger. So think like couch plus TV plus chips. The drive home from a stressful day plus hitting the takeaways. Sitting alone in the kitchen after everyone else has gone to bed and eating the ice cream. I mean, your brain doesn't just remember the food, it remembers that whole scene, the whole context. And the next time that context appears, your brain is going to start firing that dopamine pathway before you've even consciously thought about food. That is why you go from I'm fine to I need to eat that and I need to eat that now, in the span of 90 seconds. It's because you've hit a trigger and the pathway has fired. Pathway fires, the craving arrives. And it feels kind of out of control because by the time that you're aware of it, your brain has already been running that program for several seconds. So I hope that helps you to understand that it's not a character flaw or moral failing, it's just conditioning. So let's add the emotional eating layer now. We know that dopamine does something else too, right? It helps to regulate our mood. So when we're stressed, anxious, sad, bored, numb, dopamine levels drop. And your brain, which is always scanning the environment for ways to feel better and to feel safe and grounded, it knows a very reliable way to get that fast hit, right? Food. And particularly that high reward stuff I was talking about before. So any emotional eating is not a weakness. It is your brain problem solving. And it has found a really efficient, available, fast acting mood regulation tool. And yeah, it's going to go back to that because it's easy. So the issue isn't that food works, it does soothe, is that actually over time, it doesn't work quite the same. And it comes with side effects that our brain doesn't account for. And this will be familiar. Guilt, shame, maybe it turns into binge eating, things that actually make us feel worse. And then sometimes we end up restricting. And the thing about restriction is that when we restrict our food, either physically by not eating enough or mentally by labeling our foods as off limits, you actually increase the dopamine response when you eventually eat those foods. So restricting yourself from those naughty foods are making the reward feel bigger when you do have them. It also makes the pull towards them feel a lot stronger. That is why the binges feel so out of control. Hey, quick pause here, besties. If you've been listening along to the show and finding yourself thinking, wow, she is really describing me, and you feel like my approach and my vibe is really resonating with you, then maybe we are a great fit to be working together. I would love to invite you to check out my signature program, The Breakup. It's an online recovery program and a community where I'm going to guide you step by step through my food freedom method. Inside, we're going to focus on 3 big shifts. The first is learning how to re-nourish your body and your mind. Then we'll be regulating your nervous system and recognizing those emotions. And then we're going to be rewiring the patterns that are keeping you stuck with food. So I've helped hundreds of women step into binge-free lives and find body peace, myself included, and you can absolutely be the next person. So if you want to join the breakup, you can do so at any time, but if you also want to have a higher touch experience, you can choose to work alongside me one by one as you go through the program. That's called the Breakup Inner Circle. All the details are in the show notes, so you're welcome to come and chat with me in my DMs. You can schedule a clarity call with me if you're wondering whether this is the next step for you. So just send me that message. You can say done, and I'll know that you want to chat more or schedule in that call. All right, bestie, so let's get back into the episode. Okay, so let's talk about strategy. We're going to talk about pattern interruption because what you need is something that wedges itself between the trigger and the automatic response, a bit of a gap, even if it's just a really, really small one. So your brain runs that binge pathway because it's automatic. We know that now. And the goal isn't to fight the urge with sheer force, because we know that doesn't work. We've talked about that in other episodes. The goal is to create just enough of a pause through your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, choosing part of your brain, giving it enough time to come back online. So that's the pattern interrupt. And here is how it works. So when you notice the urge or the craving coming in, you do one specific thing that's different from what normally happens next. So not a big thing though. So I'm not meaning go for a full run. You don't even have to call a friend level kind of thing. Just something really tiny, something that only takes 60 seconds. So a few options. One could be that you stand up and just go to a different room, change the environment. Just the physical movement or changing location can disrupt that conditioned environment cue. You could try splashing cold water on your face or holding something cold like ice. What this does is it activates your body's physiological dive reflex. What that does is it slows down your heart rate, pulls you out of that reactive state. You could try putting your feet flat on the floor and just naming 5 things that you can see around you. That's called orientating yourself, and it really does ground you back into the present moment instead of into that craving spiral. And the point isn't that doing these kind of things will make the craving disappear permanently and forever, because they won't, okay? The point is you're creating the gap, and you're creating a moment where you can then make a choice. Previously, there wasn't a choice, right? It was automatic. But over time, when you're doing these things consistently, you're starting to weaken that automatic pathway. You're literally building new neural connections every time that you interrupt that old pattern. So give that a go. This is neuroplasticity in action, and your brain is going to change based on what you repeatedly do. So use that in your favor. Create the gap. Hit pause. And one important note is that this strategy, again, it's not about stopping yourself from eating. Okay, not the goal here. The goal is to move from being reactive to responsive. And you might do the pattern interrupt and then still decide to eat, and that's actually okay. Because in that case, you're choosing to eat from a calmer, more mindful state. And that's different from eating in that really urgent panic state, right? Your relationship with the food and yourself is going to start from making these little shifts, that kind of relationship with food, that free place with food. You've got to create that space. All right, so let's talk about this in action with a client that I work with, okay? So I have a client, and let's call her Mel, and she's been binging at nighttime, usually between like 9 p.m., 11 p.m. And she always called this her danger hour, the danger zone. So she would do her kiss to bed. She'd finally be alone. She's a single mom. And she'd just feel this enormous pull towards the pantry. And she would say it was like magnetic, it was automatic. She'd just do it. But we mapped it out together, and the trigger was nothing to do with hunger. Of course, she knew that. But it was about the relief of being alone, finally having her downtime, paired with a nervous system that had already been running on high alert all day, managing everyone else's needs. And the pantry was like the release valve. So what we did in this case was we did the pattern interrupt. So her specific one she chose was splashing water on her face, cold water. Remember that dive reflex that we talked about earlier? So she did that one, and that was the only thing that she changed at this point. 3 weeks later, after she started using the cold water on the face to pattern interrupt, she hadn't completely stopped eating at night, but there was a huge change. She said that eating felt different. And that when she did do it, it was a choice instead of feeling sucked into it. And half the time, she'd do the interrupt. She'd realize she didn't actually want food, and what she wanted was a bit of quiet. And so she started sitting outside at nighttime instead, just for a few moments, grounding, breathing. And that is what brought the binges down even further. So this is an example. Mel's a really good example of how that breaking up with food chaos can look like in real life. It's not about being perfect 24/7. It's just those little micro shifts along the way. That is real. So quick summary about what we've talked about today. Dopamine is your brain's reward and motivation chemical. Highly palatable food is going to produce a strong dopamine response. So of course, what happens is your brain builds that conditioned pathway linking specific environments and emotions to food. And we know that restriction makes it worse, not better. And willpower is not ever going to be a match for this neurological load. So that means it's not a you problem, not something that you have to try and manage. It's just how your brain has been working. All of our brains. Pattern interrupting is one strategy that you can use. We're doing that because we're creating a gap. We're bringing on that brain again. We're turning it back online. If you do that consistently, you are rewiring your brain. You are reprogramming those patterns. If you want to go deeper on any of this, you can work with me. Link is in my show notes. And if this episode landed for you, then please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not broken. It's not their fault. Their brain is just doing what brains do. So I will see you in the next episode, bestie. All right, besties, that's a wrap for today. If you want to go deeper, check out the links in my show notes. You're going to find free resources, ways we can work together, and more details on my signature program, The Breakup. This is your roadmap to help you to break free from binge and emotional eating for good. If this episode has helped you, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're feeling extra kind, leaving a quick review really helps this podcast to reach more women who need it. Take care of your beautiful self, bestie, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.